Season's greetings and Happy New Year. 2024 was a big year for comics, both for the publishing brands and for myself personally. For the brands, we've got big stuff from Marvel and DC, like Marvel's new Ultimate Universe and DC's Absolute Universe, along with their All-In initiative. On kind of the indie side, we had the Energon Universe launching. Kind of a side note, we've got Scott Pilgrim's 20th anniversary that came out. So a lot of stuff to go over. And then for me personally, I don't want to say I came back to comics because that's not really it. I just started collecting in a different way, in a much bigger way, and going to my LCS more consistently. In the past, I was kind of always more just a trade paperback person. I would get a volume here or there, but this year I decided to kind of go in more on like single issues and start collecting omnibuses, which has been really cool because I've been able to get, the whole stories from some of my favorite writers, or well, I guess now favorite writers, particularly Jonathan Hickman and Scott Snyder's kind of getting up there too. Another thing too that I started reading was the Krakoa era X-Men. I don't want to stick too much to the stuff from the past. I want to kind of talk about the stuff that came out this year and talk about the stuff that I'm really excited for, that I think everyone should be reading, especially if you like comics in general or if you just really like DC and Marvel. Just stuff that I think has been really exciting that's come out that I'm looking forward to going into the new year, then see where it goes from where we started here. So first up, probably the smallest of the bunch and the easiest to get through is the stuff from Image, particularly here. Hey everyone, this is Future Josh editing. Just wanted to point something out here. A small minor mistake I made. So while recording this, I did not realize that the Energon Universe actually launched in 2023. It just so happens that I started reading it this year. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I kind of wanted to stick to stuff that actually came out in 2024 because I did end up reading a lot of stuff during 2024 that wasn't released during that year. That one's on me for not realizing that the Energon Universe stuff came out mostly in 2023, with I think the exception being G.I. Joe, which came out in 24, but I didn't read that one. With that said, the only reason I'm keeping it in the video is just I'm that excited to talk about these books. I've never really read that many Transformers comics, so I'm really, excited to be at the ground floor of one, or, sort of ground floor of one. Plus, by comparison at least, it's newer than the Krakoa X-Men stuff I've been reading, and it's definitely newer than the Scott Snyder Batman run I've been reading. Also, the fact that many of its trade paperbacks are coming out this year in 2025. Not to mention, I've been on a bit of Transformers kick since seeing Transformers 1. I decided to keep it in. Now, if you're already caught up on all the Energon Universe stuff, or you just want to focus on hearing what I have to say about the stuff that came out during 2024, feel free to skip ahead. But if you want to hear what I have to say about those books, stick around. Also, heads up, my camera died a few times when I was recording at the table, so placed there you'll just see some scans from some of the books that I'm talking about. I'll probably have scans throughout the video anyway, but definitely in those spots where my camera was not on and I did not realize it. Energon Universe, launched by Robert Kirkman, with the Void Rivals here, and there was this free comic book day one. For this, particularly for Void Rivals, I was actually kind of caught off guard with it. I was a little bit apprehensive at first. I remember flipping through the first issue and seeing that it had like a Transformers tie-in, not entirely knowing the whole Energon Universe plan at first. And I was a little skeptical. Then I read the first issue and I was really excited. And then from there, I read the free comic book day issue that kind of tied it with the stuff for Transformers. And I'm really interested to see where the story goes. A lot of times with these sort of like giant connected universe stories, you worry about the individual stories being lost. And that's not the case, it seems like, for Void Rivals, at least so far. I've only read the first issue for that one, but I think it's got a good story on its own without having to worry about it tying into stuff with Transformers and the rest of the Energon Universe. Speaking of Transformers, that is another one that I'm cautiously optimistic about. Whenever there's a new Transformers comic or property, you're always wondering kind of how they're tweaking the war between like the Autobots and Decepticons and the war on Cybertron and their origins. And I remember reading this and thinking, okay, that's a different take. I'm curious about it. I'm interested to see where it goes. Both Void Rivals and Transformers have a hardcover coming out in 2025 that collects the first 12 issues of both series, so I do plan to get that to get myself caught up. Moving on from there, sticking with Image, we have got Rocketfellers. And I'm kind of new to the Ghost Machine imprint of under Image, if you want to call it that. Some people say this wasn't their favorite for like Ghost Machine and from like this whole kind of imprint, but I liked it. I thought it was fun. It's like Lost in Space, but Lost in Time. It works for me. It's a lot of fun. I'm really sad I actually didn't get the second issue. I really wanted the cover C art that had like the Christmas tree, and I'm just really bummed that I didn't get it. So I decided, since I couldn't make that, I'll just wait for it to come out in trades. But regardless, I still think it's fun, still interested to see where it goes. And then lastly, we've got Dawnrunner, the hardcover, which just came out, and unfortunately my LCS was sold out of it, so I've got to wait to catch back up on that. Again, another one that was, I only read the first issue, but again, really promising starts to a lot of this stuff. So I know that's not the most glowing endorsement because it's not super thorough, but I think if something hooks you from the first issue, then, you know, at least it's worth a try, and, you know, kind of low investment there. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get to DC and Marvel, because there is a ton to go through here. So biggest thing for DC is that they did their All-In initiative, kind of wrapping up from their Absolute Power event. I didn't get a chance to read it. I kind of got on there a little late. I might get it later on when it gets collected, but we'll see. But spinning out of that, we had the All-In special, which was really fun. I like the whole gimmick of having to turn the book in the middle of it and you can read it from kind of either side. I've got it, if you see here, I've got it from the Absolute side instead of the normal, like, regular DC Universe one. It was a fun read in general. It's a good setup to what's going on in the Absolute Universe and what's going on in the regular DC continuity. Now, I do want to stick to all the stuff I really, really like, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Justice League Unlimited. Justice League coming back after kind of taking some time off and letting the Titans be the premier team of DC. I like Mark Waid's writing. This fell a little flat for me. I don't think it's necessarily bad. It just feels a little paint by numbers, but, you know, your mileage may vary. Casual Comics is a pretty good video talking about it more in depth. So if you're kind of skeptical, maybe check that out if you want to learn more about it and go more in depth with it. But I feel like I had to talk about it a little bit. And also, the art's by Dan Mora, which is always fantastic. He's probably my favorite artist at DC right now, so there's that. Moving on to some stuff I liked a lot better coming out from DC before we get to the Absolute stuff, and that is Batman and Robin Year One. I think this has been fantastic. We don't get a lot of stories with Dick Grayson as Robin. It's almost by, you know, default, he's Nightwing in most media eventually. I just think it's really interesting to showcase Bruce and Dick's kind of dynamic, them forming, them learning about each other, and kind of forming the dynamic duo that we know and love. It's a great read, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's light, but it's pretty breezy to get through, and it's just a ton of fun. It just really showcases why, like, Dick's the best Robin. Sorry. I mean, Tim's a really good Robin too, and Damian has his days, but, you know, for my money, sometimes the first is the best. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Now we've got to get to the big stuff for DC that came out this year, and that is the Absolute line. I don't want to do Batman just yet. I'm going to start with Wonder Woman. I unfortunately did not get a chance to read the Absolute Superman. From what I hear, it's interesting. I don't know if I'm totally on board with it yet. I believe actually, again, Casual Comics has a good video going more in depth with the issue, so interested, I suggest checking that out. But let's talk about Absolute Wonder Woman. The issues are good. I like the writing. And the art's very good too. The only problem I have with it is kind of the setup for it. The whole thing with the Absolute Universe is, if you're unaware, you know, there's a bunch of videos going on, but if you're unaware, it's basically kind of like, it's basically Marvel's Ultimate Universe, but for DC. But I'd say it's actually closer to their new Ultimate Universe, where it's kind of spun out of something specific. The original Marvel Ultimate Universe was more just a publishing imprint. It wasn't meant to be this thing that kind of crossed over until Secret Wars happened. This is deliberately designed, kind of spinning out of the All-In special and stuff with Darkseid, and there's a lot of machinations that go on in universe with it. And because of that, our heroes are not the way that we know them. It's trying to take stuff away from them to see if that they can still be heroes. Unfortunately, this is the only problem I have with Absolute Wonder Woman is because while the story is good, I feel like it doesn't change enough from what we know about Wonder Woman. The big change for her is that instead of growing up on Themyscira, she grows up in hell. At least I haven't seen from the first two issues, hasn't had enough impact, because it still seems like she kind of has her, like, tenderness and kindness. Like, she's still a badass warrior, but she's like that anyway. I feel like there's not enough showcasing how hell has kind of influenced her personality, at least not yet. Maybe in the issue 3, which I didn't pick up yet, maybe that changes, but for my money, I feel like it's not a big enough change that I think I'm getting something different. I will say part of the way that the Absolute Universe has been described has also been a good jumping on point for new readers, and I think this is kind of compromising a little too much for the other side of just providing a fresh take. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about Absolute Batman. I have had a ton of fun with this series so far. It's been such a breath of fresh air and something I didn't know I needed for the character. Admittedly, I was making fun of how dumb he looked, like a bunch of other people, how bulky, and wasn't on board at first, but out of curiosity, got the first issue, and the art has been fantastic, and I think Scott Snyder's really just hitting it out of the park again. He does a really good job of recognizing the character in either universe. I mentioned earlier, I got his omnibus, or at least the first half of his run earlier this year, and he's kind of growing on me as maybe like my favorite Batman writer. I really loved Court of Owls, so him getting another shot at starting up another Batman run has been really great. I don't want to spoil anything because there's so many different changes. I will say issue 3 was a little bit more of a lull, but I think it's good like world building, and it kind of ends on a cliffhanger that I'm really interested to see where it goes, as opposed to something like the way that Justice League Unlimited was. That one has like a sort of like tease that I don't really care about, but like this one, I was like, okay, I could see this going in any direction, and I'm just curious about it no matter what. So out of the Absolute lines so far, granted, like I said, I've only read Absolute Wonder Woman and Absolute Batman, and I know what happens to Absolute Superman, but I'd have to say for my money, if there's going to be one that I'm keeping up with, it's definitely going to be Absolute Batman in 2025. All right, so that does it for DC. I've always been more of a Marvel person anyway, so there's gonna be a lot more Marvel stuff to talk about than there was for the DC, but I mean, like I said, the Absolute line has been a big hit so far, so definitely check it out. I really highly suggest that any Batman fan read Absolute Batman. All right, moving on to Marvel. Before we get into their new Ultimate Universe stuff, I just want to kind of piggyback off of something earlier. I got really into reading X-Men this year. I mentioned before that I got into doing not only like omnibuses, but I was also reading specifically Jonathan Hickman's Krakoa, or just all of the Krakoa era in general. And Hickman, like again, kind of similar to Scott Snyder, Hickman's maybe now like my favorite writer, especially over at Marvel and maybe just in general. I remember reading his Avengers run way back when it was coming out and feeling like it was going to be this long drawn out thing that I just wasn't really ready for at the time. But then I jumped into his Krakoa era X-Men, where he kicked it off with this. And though this didn't come out this year, it does have ramifications, so I wanted to talk about it. I'm making my way through it. At the same time, I'm going through the From the Ashes era. I've been mostly reading Gail Simone's Uncanny X-Men. I've been dipping into Jed MacKay's regular X-Men run a little bit, but for my money, I prefer this one. It's really interesting to read the From the Ashes era X-Men while also reading the Krakoa era X-Men, because it's almost like a Tarantino movie where you're seeing sort of this like rise and then you're seeing this aftermath at the same time. I'm trying not to spoil myself on too much, but I love reading both, so it's kind of inevitable at some point. But yeah, Gail Simone's X-Men. Now, not every issue is like perfectly amazing. The past couple have been a little lower quality than the first two. I think part of that is not having David Marquez on the art for all of it. That just happens with Marvel a lot of times. Sometimes artists just drop out, and it's kind of always, for me, it always takes me out of the story. But when he's hitting, I think it's great. And, I have to bring up that this fantastic cover for issue 7, this Marvel vs. Capcom homage, like worth the price of admission alone. The issue itself is decent, but I mean, just the cover is great. And I'm really interested to see where the run goes. I will say my only doubt with it is that if it focuses more on some of the newer characters, the outliers that have been introduced, I'd really like to see more just how the initial characters of Rogue, Gambit, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and Jubilee, I'm more interested to see like how they deal with the aftermath of the fall of Krakoa than I am the Hours. The Hours are cool, they're just not what I kind of came for, but if the run keeps going in that direction, we'll see if I fall off or not. But either way, I definitely think the first like 7 issues are worth reading. Moving on from that, I really think it's been like Marvel's year for miniseries. They've released a ton, and almost all of them have been really good. So we're gonna go in alphabetical order here. First up has been Aliens vs. Avengers. It's an unexpected crossover, but really cool. Really blends the two universes sort of seamlessly. And again, Hickman's writing, and I believe Ribbick's doing the art. The story, I'm curious to see how they kind of work themselves out of it. It's only a couple issues in. I think the 3rd issue doesn't come out till like February. So really excited about that. It's been great. And I've been on a big Aliens kick lately. I loved Alien Romulus, and I love the Alien Romulus prequel comic. So this has been a ton of fun. I'm really excited to see where it goes and how it kind of wraps up. This is a much more niche one. I feel like maybe I'm the only person who's really excited about this. Another one that kind of seamlessly blends the universes. Granted, they're not being blended like the way they are in Aliens vs. Avengers. It's a fun crossover. I'm not the biggest Ultraman fan. I'm more of a Gridman person, but either way, it's just fun to see these characters interact. The art's been fantastic, and it's also interesting to see, slight spoiler, Galactus kind of having knowledge of Ultraman's universe, and it's a little out there. I don't even say it's that out there because it's the craziest thing that's been written, but it's a weird crossover, and I love it. Art's been great. I don't know if it fits into any of the Ultraman manga. I doubt it does. That's something I've been meaning to read more of as well, but either way, I feel like this is a good, fun entry point, and then maybe more people will read Ultraman also. Next up, Wolverine Revenge. Another one by Hickman. Greg Capullo on art, so I feel like I'm weirdly like double dipping between my Marvel and DC creators that I like. This one kind of light on story, but it's been a fun romp just seeing Wolverine get revenge. I don't have the red band ones. Hopefully they collect those into a trade, because I think that's what I want to get, because I don't really feel like double dipping getting them all again in single issues. So it's been fun. Kind of mindless violence at some points, and there's a really fun fight between him and Sabretooth. It makes me think a little bit of his fight with Deadpool and Wolverine, just kind of all out. And yeah, not much to say about it with terms of like story depth, but either way, good time. Give it a read. All right. Now that those miniseries are all out of the way, let's get to Marvel's biggest thing kind of happening, at least for me, and that has been their new Ultimate Universe. The maker, once again, proving to be Marvel's best villain, just saying. Universe created totally in the way that he likes it. A ton of fun in almost every aspect, whether you're reading Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, or just the Ultimates. I've been checking out all three in varying capacities, but I think the first things to kind of go over is Ultimate Invasion that happened, which was a good read, which I don't know why this wasn't part of Ultimate Invasion, but then just Ultimate Universe one-shot, and then the 1 year in, which teaser into what's coming up next for the universe. I think if you're interested in the universe, definitely check out all three. I think they're good primers, and they kind of set up everything you need to know for whether you're reading Ultimate Spider-Man or the Ultimates. A little less so for Ultimate X-Men, but there's a small bit of that might cross over with the 1 year in. That'll lead, I think, it'll tie in more to Ultimate X-Men. But either way, if you're interested in that aspect of what Marvel's doing, definitely check out all three of those. Let's go into the individual books themselves, though. Probably the highlight for a lot of people, I'll start there. Probably the highlight for a lot of people has been Ultimate Spider-Man. It's basically what everyone's wanted for Spider-Man, him to have the happy life, but also get to be Spider-Man. Admittedly, I've only read a few issues from it. I kind of got to it late to the game, and so I've only got I think 3 issues of it. Because again, written by Hickman, go figure. It's another one that I'd probably wait till maybe there's an Omni for. I know it seems weird because it's just coming out and it might be years before we get that. There's a lot to go in, and I'm collecting the other books, so this one I think it's worth waiting for, just to read it all at once. And the art's by Cicchetto, I believe, Marco Cicchetto. Oh, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. It's been great. He also did the Daredevil run that I'm reading with Chip Zdarsky, and it's been absolutely fantastic. My only kind of gripe with it is that, yes, we get a Peter that is a family man, and he's got Mary Jane, he's got his kids, and he gets to be Spider-Man. The only problem is now that he's being Spider-Man as a full-grown adult, and I think a lot of what made Spider-Man kind of interesting was that he had a lot of mistakes, but he learned all those mistakes early on as a teenager, so that by the time he was an adult Spider-Man, he's a better hero for it. And so it's a little interesting to see him just start that superhero career so much later in life, and probably gonna make maybe the same mistakes, maybe different mistakes along the way. But like I said, I've only read a couple issues from it, so I don't know for sure. I would say maybe leave the comment spoiler free on that. Next up is the Ultimates. It's weird because I think Ultimate Spider-Man is the more popular book out of all three of them, but this is kind of the mainline thing of what's kind of shaping the universe, because this is addressing directly what's going on with the Maker and his sort of cabal of people and his council, dealing more directly with how that universe has been shaped and trying to rectify all the bad that's been done. I've read the first 6 issues of it. I think it's been really great. I think it's a real fun take on the characters, particularly Dr. Doom in this universe. It's a fun twist. Thor's a little more straightforward, if I recall. Same thing with Cap, who's in there. I believe they're on issue 7 as of this recording, or maybe 8, but I've only read the first 6, and that ended on a cliffhanger. I think for the next set, I'll probably just wait till a trade comes out, because it felt like it was all building, and so I definitely think I want to read it all together. If not a trade, then maybe I'll even wait for an Omni, because that's been kind of my go-to lately, is just reading everything all at once. But definitely, if you're interested in more direct kind of connectivity between what's happening in the Ultimate Universe, definitely suggest reading this. The art's been great as well. Finally, sort of the weird outlier is Peach Momoko's Ultimate X-Men. She's doing the art and the writing for it. It's another one that I wasn't entirely on board with at first. Like many people's complaints that were saying that, oh, it's not really an X-Men book. If she was just doing her own thing, it'd be better. For what people expect out of an X-Men book, they were a little disappointed, but I think those people need to kind of get over it, just give it a shot, because I think the story's really good. And it may not have big, tones of inequality and racial injustice that like regular X-Men has, and that's like, prejudice and stuff like that. It's very much just kind of like an outsider's book. Regardless, I think the story itself has been really fun, and if you like manga like I do, it's kind of a fun sort of, crossover between those two types of styles. And, Peach Momoko's art, it speaks for itself. It's this great watercolor work. It's very fluid. It's very dynamic. And I think it really just pushes the medium forward. It's another one I had to get the trade for. I'd love to get an Omni for it when it comes out. I think for the next set of issues, this is the first 6. I'll probably wait to get a trade for it instead of just picking up at issue 7. I believe there are 10 issues in right now. Yeah, that is it. A ton of stuff to read, a ton of stuff to look forward to in 2025. It's been a big year for this. I've been so happy to read all this. Anyway, what are you guys most excited about? What are you reading? What are your opinions on any of the stuff I brought up? Is there something that I missed that you're reading that you're really excited about and want me to know? Let me know down in the comments. And definitely, support your local comic book store. That helps out a ton. It's one of my favorite things has been going there, getting these single issues, talking with the people there more regularly. And so, shout out to them. Carol and John's, Cleveland, Ohio. Love going there. So yeah, and Happy New Year.